Hey, good morning, everyone. Again, it's a pretty full program, isn't it? I was very rich and quite wonderful. And of course, the yesterday evening going to the Shivananda Ashram was for me, was very touching, new, very, very new experience. So the topic this morning on Anattā and Atman, I've been letting it roll around in my mind for a while. What am I going to say? And mostly drawing blanks. But I think one of the things that's important to, and similarly to what I spoke about last night, in that these teachings and the Buddha's teachings are really about reflection. You're using these as the teaching as tools for reflection, for investigation, for contemplation. And it's not as some kind of declarative statements of the primacy of Anattā or the primacy of Atman. That doesn't get very far. So that I think one of the important aspects of certainly the Buddha's teachings, and I just don't know enough about the Advaita Vedanta or any of the Hindu teachings to be able to say anything at all, really. But I assume, especially with Advaita Vedanta being a practice tradition, that we're using these concepts as tools. They're strategies for realization, for understanding, for bringing us to an experience, and particularly the experience of, say, freedom, of liberation, of a sense of completion. So that and it is important to also recognize that just the limitations of language, say like the teaching in Buddhism of Anattā is the teaching of not self, and the teaching of Atman is self with a capital S, and these are, they're language. And it's important to be able to approach it in a language. And with any language, you have to learn how to translate. So that, and you don't really know what the language is pointing to until you have an experience. So that in the same way that in English, if you say mango, then if you understand English, then you have a sense of what it's about. And in Hindi, there's a word for mango. In the Thai language, there's a word for mango. Actually, they have many words for mangoes, depending on how ripe they are and what kind of mangoes they are. So that, language is just kind of a descriptor. It's not the actual, you don't really know what a mango is until you peel it and eat it. And so that in a religious, spiritual tradition, we don't really know what these things are pointing to until we use them and put them into practice and gain some experience. So I'd like to speak about Anattā because at least I know something about Anattā rather than the concept Atman. And so that to try to describe what it's used for. And the teachings of the Buddha, as I said, are tools, and particularly the use of anatta is a way of pointing to what we say, because when we assume a sense of self, and I've heard in these past days, I've heard Swamiji refer to the creating or the I making, the ahankara, and we have that in Pali as well. Like the root of the kind of problem of human existence is in ahankara, mankara, mananusaya. And so ahankara is the I making, the mind making, the underlying tendencies to conceit. And so this is the core of the problem. And so that we reflect, because we do, the I does not have the I in the sense of what we identify with, does not have it doesn't exist on its own. You've got to make it. You've got to create it, and that so that I making, it's something we do, and we take a position, and they say the I making, the mine. This is mine. This is mine, and you hear that refrain in the heart. This is mine. I remember years ago I was visiting my family, and my little nieces and niece and nephew were playing, actually even on a loop, it seemed, a movie, the Finding Nemo. It's a Disney cartoon thing. And there's a scene there where, and I didn't know about it. I was just sort of trying to be friends with my little niece and nephew. And but then there's this scene where the seagulls on the seashore are all fighting each other over scraps of food and the cry of the seagulls is mine, mine, mine. I said, oh, there's samsara. There's the problem of existence. There we are. So this whole sort of the mind making is creating conflict and division all the time, and that's problematic. The mananusaya, anusaya is like in say Pali tradition, is the underlying tendencies, and mana is in Pali is conceit, and again, language is in the English language, when we use the word conceit, it usually refers to holding yourself higher than somebody. But in, say, like in the Pali tradition, or in the our scriptural tradition, the how conceit displays itself is the assumption of inferiority, equality, and superiority. So that, and there's 9 bases of conceit. So actually being inferior, thinking oneself is inferior, being inferior, thinking oneself is equal, being inferior, thinking oneself is superior. Being equal, thinking oneself, you're getting the picture. Being equal, thinking oneself is inferior, being equal, thinking oneself is equal, being equal, thinking oneself is superior, being superior, being better at something, and thinking oneself is inferior, being superior, thinking oneself is equal, being superior, and thinking oneself is superior. This is all conceit. And I don't know where you'd find a position outside of that. But that's the whole point, is if as long as you've got that I-making and my-making, then you're starting to compare yourself to others and trying to establish a position, and that's suffering. So the relinquishment of that I-making and mind-making, and the comparison and trying to be something for somebody else, trying to be something in one's own in one's own mind's eye, that's an opportunity for freedom. That's an opportunity for to real peace. And so the Anattā teachings give oneself this sense of not self. And when we say, again, this is a tool that the Buddha is pointing to, whatever we take as the basis of experience, we tend to create a sense of identity with. And this is me, this is mine, this is what I am. And again, trying to establish a position. And in the Buddha's teaching, when he points to the causes of suffering, the causes of dukkha, the fundamental problem of existence, he points to desire as our desire, a craving, a thirst, and that's. Last night I used the structure of the Four Noble Truths, and so that dukkha, the suffering, cause of dukkha, cessation of dukkha, path leading to cessation. For the cause of dukkha, what the Buddha pointed to was these forms of desire. And in Pali, the word is tanha, and so it is desire that is seeking an object in either sense pleasure or sense gratification, sensory stimulation, kama tanha. And of course that the mind's moving, and that's this draw, this pull, a movement to gratification in the senses. But then there's two other forms of desire, and that's bhavatanha, vibhavatanha, and it's the craving for being, the craving for non-being. So that I'm trying to establish a position of what I am. And that fundamental trying to find an identity is never quite satisfied. And not possible to satisfy. Because it's built on a kind of an illusory basis of the I am, or I should be, or I would be, I might be. What if I wasn't? All of the possibilities of me. And the other form, vibhavatanha, is the desire for non-being, for non-existence, I shouldn't be this way. I don't like it. I don't want it. It shouldn't be this way. Whether it's about self or whether it's about the world, it is that desire for non-being. In the same way that desire is not just around self; it's around how one wants the world to be. The world should satisfy me. The world should make me happy. Well, it's not really a good bet. So the sense of understanding the nature of desire is unfulfillable, so that one relinquishes desire. So in that relinquishing of desire, there is a release, there is an ease, there is a sense of peace that comes from that. And so does that mean we can't do anything? We can't desire anything? There's two different words for desire in the Pali language, in our scriptural language, and one is tanha, and tanha is desire that is always based on greed, hatred, delusion. It's by its very definition, so it's always going to produce suffering. Whereas there is another form of desire, chanda, and chanda it can be co-opted by unskillfulness. One can, and it's usually qualified sort of gama chanda, say, desire for sensuality, sense gratification, stimulation, and that's an obstacle for meditation. But chanda as a say, without a qualifier is a neutral form of desire, more like motivation. You have to learn how to motivate yourself, and that you have to learn how to direct attention, or maybe interest. Interest is maybe a good translation. There's an interest in something, but it can be qualified as well in the sense of, say, Dhamma chanda, so desire for the Dhamma, desire for truth. Then then that motivation or that interest or that desire is being directed skillfully. Or kusala chanda, so desire for the wholesome, desire for the skillful, desire for the beneficial. That's a way that we direct our attention for of desire in a way that brings about a very positive result and is uplifting to the mind. So that is recognizing that, because sometimes when people hear the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, and the Buddha saying the cause of all suffering is desire, then you think, well, I have to become some kind of desireless zombie in order to be free from suffering. Well, that's not at all how it works. And my own experience of people who I feel have some kind of realization, they're definitely not zombies. They're engaged and active and have real personalities. And even in the time of the Buddha, the personalities of the different great disciples of the Buddha displayed itself in different ways. I'm thinking of Buddha, the foremost in wisdom, but he had a bit of a playful nature, and talked about Mahamoggallana, the foremost in psychic powers, and communing with the different realms of existence, and so different personalities. Ananda was the Buddha's closest, or like his attendant, and he was just very, very caring, very loving, and as well as being extremely astute. The reason why we have all of our scriptures in the play is attributed to Ananda. He was at all of the Buddha's teachings, and even when he wasn't there, part of his request from the Buddha when he became the Buddha's attendant was that if he missed any teachings, would the Buddha repeat them to him so that he could commit them to memory. And after the Buddha's passing away, then as a council was convened, and the teachings and discourses were all collated, and it was all by memory. That was Ananda was key to the preserving of the teachings. So these different personalities being displayed, so that and they all have their own particular wishes and temperaments, but it's in the service of truth, in the service of, and in particular, I think the flavor of liberation and freedom, and is in this sense of letting go, releasing, relinquishing. Are we willing to let go? What are we willing to let go of? What happens when we have to let go of a particular personality trait that's not very, it doesn't really serve us well, but it's just we're so used to it. How do you can just hear the cry in the heart, to sort of, no, not yet. I don't want to give it up. And that's suffering. And so that recognizing what is suffering, what is the cause of suffering, and paying attention to relinquishing, letting go. So the Anattā is a teaching that helps us to let go, in that sense of, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. And generally that formula of investigation is particularly applied to the basis of personality or being from the Buddha's perspective. What is it what does the sense of I and me and my mine coalesce around in our experience? And of course, body, physical body. In Buddhism, it's called the 5 khandhas, or the 5 aggregates of being. So body, physical body is one. We take our body to be, this is me, this is mine, this is what I am. And that's not a very stable sense of identity. These bodies get old, they get sick, they die. They don't last all that long. So so not a very trustworthy one. So unsatisfactory, worthy of relinquishment, worthy of letting go. But then there's the aspects of mind, in feeling, and that's in Pali it's Vedana, and the sense of, and this is basic kind of feeling tone of our experience. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. So we take those feelings because we quite naturally gravitate to the pleasant, and we are repelled by the unpleasant, and we tend to be either ambivalent or confused about the neutral, and so then we try to change that as quick as we can, and whereas sometimes even making something unpleasant is better than things being neutral. Like they did some experiments in, can't remember where, some university psychological experiments where people were left in a quiet room by themselves, but they could, and I'm not remembering it very clearly, but it just sort of came to mind. But people could give themselves like an electrical stimulation, shock, which was not pleasant. And rather than sitting there by themselves in quiet and neutral, it was a better distraction to make themselves feel pain and discomfort. And it's just human tendencies. So the neutral tends to either lead to or boredom or a sense of confusion or just not very clear. So how do we make the neutral clear? I mean, that's why in meditation, just learning how to be present when the mind does start to settle. How do we maintain mindfulness without just trying to seek something more pleasant or starting to drift off into proliferation and fantasy or into dullness? So those, and that's all around feelings. Making those and not recognizing that this is just what are the constituents of a human being, and this is natural. It is the way it is, and it's just the way it is. And because the problem for us is not that we experience the pleasant, the unpleasant, or the neutral. The problem is when we experience anything, or when we experience the body. The problem is that we react to it out of liking, disliking, wanting, not wanting, approving, disapproving, and spinning the mind with proliferation. And that keeps us off balance, unsettled, unable to be peaceful and clear. And this is why, say, Ajahn Chah, my teacher, I mean, sometimes he'd give detailed descriptions of practice, but I remember one of the times saying, I don't know why people make such a problem out of practicing this. It's very simple. There's only two things you need to do: know and let go. And it sounds so easy, but it's hard to do because again, that sense of identification with experience, and then the running commentary of that wanting and not wanting, should be this way, shouldn't be that way. And allowing and trying to annihilate that is vibhava, desire for non-being. So we get caught in these loops of desire, so that it's just the clear seeing of, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not what I am. So this non-self quality allows us to, again, we're using it as a tool, as a strategy for trying to get us to acknowledge and recognize truth and recognize the way things truly are, which is not all of that movement and instability and reactivity and agitation. That's what we add to our experience. That's what we add to this human experience. The other aspect of these five khandhas, so form, physical form, feeling. Third one is sanya, which is like perception, memory, association. I mean, it's how the mind functions quite naturally. Every single mind moment has a feeling tone to it, and it has some kind of memory, association, perception associated with it. It's just how the mind works. But then, of course, when we cling to it or assume its solidity, then it becomes problematic. So just being able to see, oh, this is a memory. You come into a space and you see, you're, say, unexpectedly somebody there who you don't really like. A memory, association. Why do I immediately have a running commentary of what this? We drag up this history and torment ourselves with it. We do that with ourselves. We keep dragging up memories of who we thought we were, think we might have been, assume we had to be. All of these things are proliferations of mind that torture us, really, and this is suffering. And and the thing is, they can be let go of. And it's there's a beautiful teaching that the Buddha gave, and it was, you see, it's just the encouragement to do the wholesome, do the practice. He said, if you couldn't do it, I wouldn't teach it. But you can do it, therefore I teach it. So do the practice. And it's just a very simple encouragement, which I find very inspiring. The next aspect of the the five aggregates of being is what are called sankharas, and these are mental formations. These are creations. These are and the characteristic of and again, this is from the Pali, and I'm sure that this is an ancient Indian word that has been interpreted and used over history, but the sankhara is a formation, something that is constructed. And what is constructed on a mental level is our thoughts and emotion. And so that all of and that is, that the range of thought and emotion is vast. But in the end, it just is another mental formation. It isn't, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. So that, and it doesn't mean, and again, you've got to hold it skillfully. You want to hold it in a place of clarity and compassion, because it's like pushing away thoughts, pushing away emotion is not a solution. It's, again, that's where we're reacting out of don't like it, shouldn't be this way. Don't don't want it. And that vibhavatan, that desire for non-being, non-existence. In the same way that we try to prop up our sense of being sometimes. So there's understanding this fundamental way that we live as human beings, how we create suffering and how to let go of it. And the letting go is much more around the just seeing things. When something is seen for what it is, it loses its compelling quality, or its attraction, or its charm, so its ability to delude us is seen through. And in again in the Pali tradition, the one of the goals of practice is insight, and one of the words for insight is vipassana. And all it means is seeing through. So that insight, seeing through things. I mean, it's got whole levels of different connotations in a modern sense of what vipassana is, and there's all sorts of debates, even in the Theravada Buddhist world, of what real vipassana is. But if you go back to the scriptures you read, it's a word the Buddha used for clear seeing, and like seeing through things, insight. And there's a natural response in the heart to seeing something clearly, and it's to relinquish, to release, to let go. Because we realize we've picked up a burden that we really didn't have to pick up. And we don't really put that burden down until we see that, oh, this is a burden. This is heavy. It's like, just like, you pick up a glass like that for something to drink. It's not that you can't pick anything up. You can utilize it, you can rely on it, it can be beneficial. But, if I just keep talking like this with this here, this is going to get burdensome really quickly. And so that's, these aggregates of being, form, feeling, perception, mental formations. The last one is consciousness. And consciousness in this context and how it's used, how it's defined, is just sense consciousness. The knowing of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and the mind base itself that integrates it, and just it's much more of a functional definition as opposed to an exalted perspective, so that it's seeing how that works, understanding how these different aggregates of being, we can use them. We have to use them. We have to learn how to use them. Because if we don't, well, we keep suffering. So there's not much, it's not so useful. But learning how to use the constituents of being in a way that's in the employ of truth, of Dhamma, for the cultivation of the skillful, of the wholesome, of the beneficial, one of the things that the Buddha talked about in terms of bringing benefit or bringing, goodness, happiness and well-being, it's always in terms of for oneself and for others. It's a if one's doing it properly for oneself, it should be a benefit to others. Doing it for others, it will be a benefit for oneself. There's no huge distinction there, and especially when there is a non-identification with the I-making and mind-making, then there is no division between self and other. It is that identity view that keeps creating division and separation and suffering. So it is a important tool, this use of anatta. Also in in the scriptural language, again for Pali Buddhism, the use of one of the fundamentals in these Four Noble Truths, or the structure of the path of liberation that the Buddha gives, it's always distinguished as a middle way. And there's both like a middle way of practice, and there's a middle way of teaching. So that when he teaches, it's also teaching by a middle way. So it's not a categorical teaching, or there is this balance that the Buddha is trying to establish. Both in terms of practice and training, what we do, but then also a middle way of view, so that we see things rather than seeing things from a personal perspective or an identity perspective, we see things in the perspective of causal processes. Things come into being and passing away according to cause and condition, and it's just the way of nature. But we don't need to insert a sense of self into that. We just have to see it clearly. And there was actually one of the chants that the monastics from Bangalore chanted this morning was about the dependent origination and how things come into being, how they pass away, and that they're dependently arisen. And this is a middle way of understanding that circumvents that deep habit of creating an identification and an identity, an I-making, a mind-making, that sense of establishing a position. And the Anattā teaching is a middle way of viewing this perspective of I. So Anattā is your middle point. Atta in the sense of I, self, and from a small perspective, is one extreme. The other extreme is nirata, and which is like negation of self, a pushing, like an annihilation of self, a rejection of self. And then anatta is your middle way, this is not self. So that, yes, it exists, yes, it is here, but it's not what I am. It's not mine. It's not. There's not a me within that. So it's this your middle perspective that allows a relinquishment, a letting go, an ease around navigating these very human tendencies. We're from our birth. We form that. It comes with us, and we create a sense of I and mine. And it takes a little while, even in newborn infants, but they're. It's just, you see it happening. It's as if anybody's raised children, you start realizing, oh God, good grief, where did this personality, this identity come from? And but it's the again, this middle way of saying, okay, that's not what I am. It's not me. It's not mine. It just is, and it arises and it ceases, and it doesn't need to be clung to. It doesn't need to be made a story of. It doesn't need to be complicated. And as one of the teachings that the Buddha gives, just do not complicate the uncomplicated. And truth is uncomplicated. Don't complicate it. This reality and the fundamental existence is not complicated. Don't add that addition of complication. And when we do that, that's the whole purpose of, say, insight, seeing clearly, letting go, relinquishing, is to come to that place of non-complication. That's where our sense of peace and freedom lie. So anyway, those are some reflections from this morning.